Hello there. When I was filming the climbing video, I started to notice a lot of things that I couldn't unsee, and as a software engineer, I naturally had to investigate. How do enemy spawns work in Zelda Tears of the Kingdom? I believe I have most of the answers, and let's dive in. This is going to be one of the most useful videos you ever watch if you are interested in farming monster parts for any armor or any purpose. I just had a fresh blood moon and I'm riding through the field in which I just killed a bunch of Keese. Every heart on the mini-map represents a dead Keese from one single blood moon. Yet we are not seeing a single one right now. Why is that? When you compare Zelda Tears of the Kingdom at launch to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, there's a stark difference in the performance and the quality of the environment. It's very clear that Zelda Tears of the Kingdom took a lot of care to ensure that performance does not dip a meaningful amount in any situation. Breath of the Wild was released on this same hardware 6 years ago, which in the tech world is an eternity. This game makes Breath of the Wild look barren. There is so much going on and so much to see. After extensive testing on enemy spawns, I have a lot of clues into how not only Tears of the Kingdom operates relatively smoothly, but why sometimes we see enemies in certain spots and sometimes we don't, even when they should be there. In this video, I'm going to tell you about the two different types of spawns and the subset of one of those types of spawns and how they impact each other and how to maximize your profits and loot. No matter where you are or what is going on in the game, these four mythical dragons are somewhere on the map and the game is keeping track of them. The dragons are what I would like to refer to as a Tier 1 static spawn. They are the highest priority asset this game processes. One of their main characteristics is the fact that they are visible from so far away. One step down from those would be the new enemy Gleeok. A Gleeok is what I consider a Tier 2 static spawn and the first that really starts to establish a pattern. They are at a set spot on the map and they are always where you expect them to be after a blood moon. A Gleeok is special because like the mythical dragons, you can see them from very far away. These two classes are also very resource intensive despite the fact that they can be seen so far away. Once we get past these special assets, you might be surprised to find that a Lionel is no different than a flock of fire Keese. On this descent from Death Mountain on the minecart, we are shown many different static spawn enemies. If I am trying to gather fire Keese Wings and there has been a blood moon, I know that if I go down this route, I will find exactly 12. There will be a group of 5, and then a group of 4, and then a group of 3. There are many other enemies sprinkled in there too, like the Moblin Archers, there's a Silver Bokoblin, and there's the Octoroks. It's very clear that Zelda Tears of the Kingdom does some sort of asset throttling to ensure that performance keeps up. It's unclear if there's a magic number, so to speak. I believe that there's many factors that go in, but long story short, you can bank on the static enemies being where they're supposed to be without fail. What gives away an enemy as a static enemy is the fact that the Purah Sensor can track it even if you can't see it. You can see this clearly when viewing these fire Keese. The second major category of enemy is what I would like to call a random spawn. This is something far more prevalent in Tears of the Kingdom than it was in Breath of the Wild. The very large presence of these type of enemies makes going from point A to point B always a unique experience. There's always something different going on every time you go. The dead giveaway that something is a random enemy is that the Purah Sensor only starts going off once you see it. Despite this, if you run out of range and watch it despawn, most of the time the game remembers that there was X enemy at this spot, and if you run back under many conditions, that enemy will respawn again. Unless, of course, you choose to defeat it. Sometimes in instances such as this, the respawn mechanic on it seems downright bizarre. You'll run to where you just saw it and then see nothing and then start running away, and all of a sudden the Purah Sensor starts going off. Why is this? I have very strong evidence that this is because of asset throttling to maintain performance. This map is littered with all of those aforementioned static spawns, and the game prioritizes those, caps the amount of enemies that are visible, and when you run out of their radius, they despawn, and then the game allows the random spawn to appear. It can literally be something so simple as a wolf running out of your sight line, allowing the bat to come back. What's crucial to understand here is that a random enemy is considered the lowest priority by the game. If there's a lot going on, the random enemy will not be shown. It's also extremely important to understand that there are a ton of random enemy spawn points all around you in any given location. It's actually quite staggering. A lot of them are inactive at the time that you run by them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will stay that way. Each random enemy spawn point has a predetermined set of possible things that can appear there. Some are a list of one, some are a list of one of maybe 5. So the game will spawn every single static spawn that is within your radius, and then it will fill in all remaining spots with viable random spawns that are within your sightline. From what I gathered though, there is no evidence that the game will ever forcibly despawn a enemy that is within your sight range and active. This is extremely evident when chilling by this random spawn fire Keese until well after 7 a.m. when it shouldn't be there. Eventually, after messing around with this single random spawn bat for about an hour, I began to struggle to respawn it. I still am a bit unsure about the mechanics of when a random spawn decides to no longer be active. However, I have a strong sense that throttling is the largest impact. And in this case, I began to see Dinraal approach, and I blame Dinraal for everything going weird. As I stated earlier, the dragons are some of the most resource-intensive assets that travel around the map, and they will just randomly appear in your sightline. If you are trying to farm monster parts, I believe that this wreaks havoc on what you're trying to accomplish. So my advice here is, if you are targeting enemies that are random spawns, and you see a dragon, you might want to go somewhere else, or make the dragon disappear somehow. I wanted to do further testing on all of my theories, and the perfect place to do that is the Tabantha snowfield, because there is a lot going on there, including a Gleeok. If you watched my video on farming climbing gear, I covered this snowfield extensively, but there are some inaccuracies about my coverage that I had now realized after all of this extensive testing. As I approach and leave these two ice keys from different angles, you can see them respawn in unique ways. Sometimes we'll see one and then the other, sometimes we'll see both at the same time, and sometimes I have to run closer to get it to actually happen. This is because there's just so much going on in different directions, and if I am coming from a more busy direction, it is showing that by the delayed respawn. If you've been paying attention, then you might have noticed that the most likely time to get a lag on the respawn was if I was approaching from the north going south. Upon inspecting what was to the north, you find a large bokoblin structure with at least 6 enemies in there. These are static spawns in a beast camp, and they are getting resource priority to appear. And they are sometimes active even if you can't even see them. In the old days in Breath of the Wild, trying to do this same field was easy. All you had to do was put your Sheikah Sensor on and it would send you to an ice Keese somewhere. If I was getting chased by a random bokoblin or something, for example, I would just ignore it and keep running and follow the Sheikah Sensor. It didn't matter. Everything else was a distraction. It is in this location that I realized what a random spawn is and how it differs, and that it's not like it was in Breath of the Wild. Why wasn't I constantly getting Purah Sensor dings on Ice Keese when I know that they are everywhere in this field? That is the core question that led me to ultimately make this video. After all of this testing, I realized that even though I was really only after Keese Wings, it was actually in my best interest to go in there and raid the bokoblin camp and get rid of them all. I also realized that other random enemies that I might not necessarily be interested in should also be defeated, even if they're not static enemies. If I even see a random moose, that counts as an asset. I need to run it over on my way to searching other things. Once I began doing these things and not trying to farm like I'm still playing Breath of the Wild, the frequency in which I encountered Ice Keese increased dramatically. I had an inkling that there was more random spawns than we were initially seeing when I entered this snowfield, but I was absolutely blown away with the map that began to take shape. Every dead Keese became a heart on that map. And furthermore, I would find other random spawns in the place of those hearts in a lot of the time. I do not believe that I was ever able to find an Ice Keese in the location of a previously defeated double heart. So I believe that these random spawns still kind of act like a static spawn as far as their availability with a blood moon. It's just there's so many of these spawn points that you can end up getting way more bats than you would originally think. With all of the nearby static enemies defeated, I quit seeing the Keese appear from behind after I had already run by their spot. They would, for the most part, begin loading as I would expect them to as I entered their radius. These observations all but confirm my theories about the game throttling and hiding a random enemy if it didn't meet the criteria of performance. When it was all said and done, I began approaching like 30 killed Ice Keese in one blood moon, and it absolutely blew away the point I was trying to prove. When I made the climbing video, I was still trying to farm like I was playing Breath of the Wild. I kept running around using the Purah Sensor and not killing anything else, and I insinuated that getting about 12 wings was a good haul for one blood moon. I could not have been more inaccurate in that statement. To be fair, I don't know of anyone who has done this kind of testing and has figured this out. I'm sure if I spent more time on Death Mountain, I would end up getting more Fire Keese to spawn as well. Maybe not in this huge volume that I pulled off in the snowfield, but still a significant amount. Granted, on Death Mountain, there's still that 12 Keese that are static, and you can have a guaranteed 12 and be out in 5 minutes and then just come back in another blood moon. There's something to be said for that too. All in all, the proper way to farm in Tears of the Kingdom is to know both sides of this equation. You need to assess what static options are out there, ideally hit those first, and then identify good areas where there are a possibility of random spawns and just start going on a rampage and taking out everything. And if the random spawns are there, you will find them. As far as I can tell, there are not infinite random spawns, though, per blood moon. Eventually, you're going to run dry, and it'll become obvious when stuff just stops spawning altogether and you're just in an empty field. But until you see that, keep going. So yeah, for the overwhelming majority of my playtime this week, I was chasing bats to bring this video to you so that the community could know the spawn mechanics of Tears of the Kingdom. I really hope that this was insightful and informational and really kicks your farming into the next gear. I am not going to miss chasing around bats at all. I believe that either no one is going to watch this video or it's going to be one of my biggest hits. I am still pretty new to YouTube and we're going to find out. So yeah, this is what you get when there's a software engineer playing a video game. I just obsess over things like this. So I hope that this proved to be valuable to you. If you did, it would be an honor if you hit the thumbs up or subscribe. I would really appreciate it. I'm trying to get this channel off the ground and I've been making progress and I'm very thankful for the support I have so far. Y'all have a great day and I'll see you again soon.